So Dislyte is updated and Celestia Anomaly is now released. This content is going to take a lot longer to complete than most of the other ones that we've encountered. For starters, there's 150 floors to complete, and every 5 and 10 floors has some sort of boss to fight. We will be able to get rewards from the different floors that we complete, as well as AFK rewards, which also allow us to complete floors easier. Similar to previous events, there's actually going to be a passive tree, which will give us passive bonuses to our teams as we try to progress through this new content. The majority of the time, we'll be making use of a new tactic called Blockade, which is on the screen. This mechanic will work best with espers that can multi-hit, as well as ones that can assist. I highly recommend choosing certain passives, specifically Chase and Ambush, to increase the chances of those things happening. Being able to essentially lock down the bosses will give your teams higher scores and being able to beat content easier. I'll show an example of one of these teams. This is the Wither Messenger 30 floor. These espers feature multi-hits, as well as some of them being Prisoner espers, which are stronger for this part of the game. As you progress through the floors, you'll notice that there are multiple ways to approach them. One of them being, well, most of them will be inflicting multi-hits. Multi-hits against bosses like this do an additional kind of true damage to the boss. This can even make it so that way you can build your espers defensively if you're particularly fighting a boss that is doing too much damage to your team. And if you're able to spare them, counterattack sets are actually extremely useful in most of this content. This is what I would consider a really good baseline team. There are multi-hits and assists throughout the whole team, as well as sustainability with Ta and Meredith. Now consider this team more like roles, and if you were to swap out to a better healer than Meredith, I'd probably use Ahmed, because he's also considered a prisoner esper, which means he gets a bonus on this stage. And you're really going to want to try to focus on mostly prisoner espers. They're going to allow you to get bonuses from your passive tree, as well as doing additional things basically throughout the whole fight. One of the things you may notice is that every hit that you do essentially builds up that lock counter, and when you get to 100 of that, then you actually lock down the boss. Locking them down basically allows them to take more damage, as well as stopping them from taking a turn. So it's very, very important, and as you play, you'll probably progress and use that more and more. It will be especially useful against the Chimera, which we'll get to later. Now, I recommend kind of focusing on 2 teams, one for boss stages like that, and this one for progressing through the floors themselves. As you progress through the floors, you'll fight these waves that are very similar to doing like the Temporal Tower, and in these you can actually stun the enemies and lock them down. Personally, I have used and I would continue to use this team to progress in a very free-to-play friendly fashion through all the floors. So the twins and Asenath can be attained through the shops, and the rest were actually event espers that were able to pick up previously. So the job is basically just to lock down the opponents and to gradually work them down until you win. As you progress through the floors, you're going to be able to get certain rewards, and those rewards are going to allow you to get requests, and if you get enough of the pieces, you can actually get Yamato out of the shop. This brings us to the big boss of this, which is the Chimera. And you're able to basically use your passive tree in this fight, and it'll be incredibly useful as you progress. Against this boss, you really want to focus on locking them down. That's getting the 100 hits or the 100 locks on them, which will essentially cause them to lose stacks and do less damage to your team. It is very vital to be able to do so. Now, there are many different approaches to what team could be the best, or what is even a reasonable free-to-play team. I'm not really sure what that's going to end up looking like, but we have some ideas of what we can do with it. And I'll show you my little clip here to kind of get an idea of the team I'm using to start off with, and how that will change as I continue to make more videos and unlock more of the content. And if you look on the screen now, you can actually see what happens when you get them locked to 100. they will no longer move, their gauge does not increase, and they take increased damage on every hit. So it's a great time to get that extra bit of damage in and be able to reduce the damage they do. I'm not sure what the top team is going to be, but I can only imagine it's going to be something that's very speed heavy and multi-hit heavy, and I think that's the only approach it can really have against this boss. Now this is one of my earlier attempts against this, and I wasn't really sure how it paired against most people, so I wanted to look at the leaderboards to kind of get an idea. And in my group, I'm definitely number 1, and number 2 is pretty close, but there's a big gap from there. So this is a pretty reasonable score at this point in the game. So there are some people that really did well, and I'm going to go ahead and see what I can find out, and then see what I can recommend to you. Please subscribe if you want to see more content like this. And if you have any sort of advice or learned anything about this boss that you'd like to share with other people, please comment below. And if you have any questions, please comment and I'll try to answer them as I can. Thank you.